Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG and welcome to another video. We have something a little bit new for you today. Basically, me and James, who some people might know from the Cube set reviews that we've been doing for the last couple of sets, have decided to start a podcast that we're calling Powerful Nothing. This is one of our first episodes. Every now and then I will take bits of these episodes and make them into videos that you'll see on this channel, but all links to the podcast will be down in the description below. You should be able to find it anywhere that you can get a podcast. So Spotify, Google, Apple iTunes, all that kind of stuff. If you like Magic and if you like people having a good time talking about Magic, then it might just be for you. Do go check it out, leave it a review, all that good stuff. But time for me to hand it over to me in the podcast, and I'll see you all soon. Hello and welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering podcast. We're on episode 3, but now seemed like a good a time as any to actually introduce the podcast properly. My name is Dan, found on the internet as Too Sweet MTG. I am joined by my co-host James. How is it going, dude?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Excited to review the MTGO Vintage Cube changes. I play an unhealthy amount of that format, so definitely have some opinions to share. And also do a fun trophy race every season, which I'm quite excited to get back into immediately after we've started recording with our guest here. So yeah, should be a lot of Magic being chatted this evening for sure.
No, fantastic. And yeah, before we get into the episode, it is time to introduce our bonus guest for today. We have Josh, better known online as Firetruck, who can often be found tearing up vintage. Welcome. How is it going?
Yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah, also excited to talk Vintage Cube. It is the best format. And yeah, look forward to winning the trophy race. So
I mean, logically, it should happen at some point, but we'll see.
yeah, James is on a classic Lucky James streak, but it's fine. It's fine. This season it'll be mine, I'm sure. I like that you said you're going to be getting into the queues immediately after starting recording for this, James. Does that mean you're already in the first queue?
I was going to ask which of you two is already playing.
I'm logged on. I'm prepared to spend this entire conversation debating whether I should click join queue.
Sadly, I don't have that amount of faith in my internet connection, so I'm going to wait until after the recording. So give you a nice head start,
Fantastic. So yeah, so today we are going to be talking about the Magic Online Vintage Cube. It's up live for the next week because there's a showcase coming up where you get to see some of the best Magic players battle it out for some real-world high-stakes cash. With it as well, we've also had probably the most changes that we've ever seen in one go to the Vintage Cube. I think it's around the 80 change mark, which is a very, very large number for a 540 cube. I know the two of you have untold trophies between you both, but before we get into the weeds, probably the best place to just start, just kind of set the ground level, is what type of cube is the MTGO Vintage Cube? Kind of what can we expect? Like, Josh, when I throw this to you first, what can you expect from the Vintage Cube?
Lots of power. You've got all the restricted cards. Well, not all the restricted cards, but you got the Power 9 included, which is the most fun bit. So you get to do lots of broken starts with Moxen and Lotus. You've also got Recall and Time Walk. So yeah, lots of busted high variance plays, swingy games. But that all the fast mana typically supports lots of just like classic fun strategies. So you get to play with pretty iconic cards through the history of Magic. So yeah, it is just all of the best from, the last 30 years collated into one place. Well, maybe not all the best, all the most powerful, I guess, because I don't know if Oko is in fact a high point, but
no one likes Oko, let's be honest.
Depends on which side of the battlefield it is as to my love for Oko. But
and then James, as kind of Josh has mentioned, there's a lot of high-powered cards, but I'm assuming that also means there's a lot of high-powered archetypes, like a lot of kind of quick wins, that kind of stuff. What kind of decks can you be expecting to be facing in a cube like this?
Absolutely. There's it's definitely, as Josh said, a cube where you can do a lot of broken stuff, and even though you don't have to do broken stuff to win, you definitely need to be keeping the fact that exists in mind as you're drafting and as you're playing. You need to be either doing something broken or interacting with something broken with the broken stuff, or just going really quickly. So some of the best decks you'll see are fast combo decks. So this is Reanimator, this is Storm, or like Tinker artifact style decks, We also have the classic Splinter Twin, Kiki-Jiki combos, and Sneak Attack. But then the reactive cards are also really good. So I'd say the spot where you probably will end up most is blue-based good stuff. With because the blue cards are very, very powerful in this cube. This is not a cube with a good color balance. I think that's a feature, not a bug. But the blue reactive cards are very good here. So you've got the counter spells, and that also, of course, gives you access to broken stuff like Ancestral and Time Walk. And then you've got aggressive decks, which can actually be quicker. It'd be as quick as the average draw of a lot of the combo decks, even if they can't be as quick as the fastest possible draw. You're not going to be quicker than Dark Ritual and Tomb Reanimate, but you can maybe be quicker than them setting up a Reanimate on turn 4. So that's mono white aggro and mono red aggro, both very, very strong decks in the format. But the nice thing about this format is it's really open. We can't give you a list of like 10 archetypes and all of your drafts will fall into one of them neatly. There's a lot of bleed between all the archetypes. And I think even after 100 drafts of this format, you will be drafting new stuff that you have never drafted before.
Yeah, definitely. Unlike a lot of kind of cubes and a lot of more kind of like, especially more recent standard sets where kind of like the gold cards signpost you what you should or what you can be drafting. That's definitely nowhere near as much the case in this kind of cube where, again, we also have all the best fixing in the world. We have original jewels, we have fetches, we have shocks, we have triomes, we have some fast lands which have just come in, which I'm actually quite a bit of a fan of. It means your mana base is going to be pretty good. So 2 colors is kind of quite easy. You can get quite splashy with these and just play the best cards that you want basically quite a bit of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a format where you don't want to be drafting colors, you want to be drafting a deck. You can't just be, oh, well, red and green both seem pretty open, so I guess I'll draft Gruul. Look, I've got these decent creatures on my curve and some removal spells. That will not serve you well here.
Yeah, I think even when you're in the more reactive decks, you still need like a very structured plan a lot of the time. Like, it's hard for you just to win by going plow your guy, counter spell your draw spell. Here's my Baneslayer Angel. That doesn't really win in cube too much. That sort of line. Yeah, I mean it can, but
yeah, it's less likely in a cube with this power level of stuff. Like you could just get blown out just as quickly. Awesome. So that's kind of the base of the cube, what we've kind of experienced in the past. A lot of the conversation today is going to be about the 80 card changes that they've made to it. There's a lot of new and interesting stuff in here. There are some archetype changes as well, which isn't something that you tend to see with the MTGO Vintage Cube anywhere near as much. Like it takes like quite a bit of time to kind of them to slowly introduce new archetypes. The wheels kind of Hull Breacher type stuff only really came in sort of recently.
Didn't they drop Hull Breacher in the end?
They have, yeah. they have just cut Hull Breacher.
But we have Narset and Leovold still.
Yeah. What's interesting though about you saying the aggressive decks, I think Mono Red's taken a massive dagger. I think it looks pretty like it's been weakened quite a bit in this update. Like it didn't get many new toys. Because a lot of that has gone into the new sacrifice theme.
Yeah, shall we start with Mono Red then? Yeah, I think that's a good place. Because I guess Mono Red is kind of a bread and butter. It's a straightforward isn't the right way to say it, but kind of like it's a good deck for newer players to get into because it is curve out, kill your opponent before they can do anything broken. In terms of the red changes, so they have added some strong red cards. Like Embercleave has come in replacing Hazoret. I'm assuming if we like Mono Red, we like Embercleave. Do you think that's fair?
I really struggle with the idea of like equipment being good is the top end of my red deck. I mean, it might be good, but one of the issues is right. We're playing the most powerful cards ever, so I might curve 1, 2, 3 Embercleave, but if my opponent just paths to exiles my target, and shocks one of my other creatures, then I don't have the sort of 5/4 indestructible dude I was going to have in previously, sort of thing. So I'm Embercleave is powerful and it will win games, but I'm not sure it's the correct top end for your mono red deck. I think I'd rather be in the, I don't know, actual 4-drop permanent, which is going to attack and block and that sort of thing myself. But yeah, because yes, all of our proactive plays are, some of the best we can do, but also all the reactive plays are the most broken of all time as well. Like,
Yeah, it's a pretty matchup dependent one, I think, Embercleave.
Yeah.
Like if your opponent has blocking your creatures as a large part of their plan, then Embercleave's pretty fantastic. The issue with Embercleave though is if your curve out is disrupted, then you're looking at your Embercleave and it costs 5 mana and it doesn't really do anything. Whereas something like Hazoret is just a threat on its own. It can help you recover after a wrath or just a bunch of spot removal on your guys. Yeah, I think it's an interesting race. I think it will like let you win games really quickly. I don't know if it does great things for your overall win percentage. Actually, Embercleave.
No, that's actually quite interesting because obviously, Embercleave has done a lot of powerful things in a lot of formats, but obviously we are, as you both said, we are now putting up against some of the stronger cards of all time.
I think the reason we're sort of colder on it is it's just very situational, right? Like if we come up against a control deck that's got Doomblade and Death Touch creatures that we have to get through, then Embercleave is a lot worse than Hazoret. But
it's great against Death Touch creatures. Double strike.
Oh,
Double
true.
Strike and trample.
Okay, sure. It's great against Death Touch creatures,
but it is bad against Doomblades.
Exactly. Like, yeah, if they're interactive, it's going to be real rough versus a Hazoret, which basically couldn't be interacted with and was a threat regardless of whether we'd curved perfectly and it's our last card and we're attacking for 5, or whether it's just this is my indestructible enchantment for a few turns whilst I shock you every turn. Like, yeah, I think Hazoret's just more consistent. Embercleave is going to be more swingy and more haymakery, and it's going to have a lot of games where it's awful and some pretty premium moments where we put it on, something dope and it's going to go nuts.
Yeah, I think it's partly just the strategies that Embercleave is great against, like blocking your creatures, tend to be a much smaller part of how people are trying to stay alive against an aggressive deck in Vintage Cube compared to like a lower powered cube.
No, that makes sense. I think let's stick on the mono red train and just talk about some of the other, like, I guess let's talk about some of the losses for the mono red deck and see what's come in to replace them. So just running through the list of all of them now. So cards that you would have seen previously in a more aggressive deck. So cards like Abbot of Kerrel Keep probably would have got in. Koth the Hammer, that seems like a bit of a loss. Like Lelia the Blade Reforged, that's
a crazy card to cut for me.
Sorry, I'm just looking at what Chandra Acolyte of Flame does, and I don't know how that's ever playable. But
Yeah.
I think the big loss for mono red is going to be the Dragon's Rage Channeler out and Orcish Lumberjack in, because Orcish Lumberjack does like nothing, if I remember it correctly, for mono red.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It's a lands card, right?
When your red 1-drop says sacrifice a forest, that's not where we want to be in mono red, right? So
you can put Tiger in your deck, and
I'm pretty hyped for the Lumberjack. I'm very excited about it because it's just, there's now 2 Black Lotus in the cube. That's cool. But yeah, I think that's another thing it's not going in mono red's favor, because I don't think we want to be Embercleaving our Lumberjack, right, in our aggressive deck.
I wouldn't have thought so, no. I think the ones that stick out for me are Lelia and Dragon's Rage Channeler, which were both not exclusively mono red cards by any means. They're both just pretty strong in a lot of red decks, but the Lelia lets you snowball so quickly, especially if you can accelerate it out in any way. I think that was really one of the premier red 3-drops. And the Channeler, just so much card selection, because one of the issues you have in I think both mono red and mono white is that unlike for blue decks, you don't really get a lot of selection. You kind of just play with the cards you draw, and if you draw too many lands, then you've just got to live with that. And Dragon's Rage Channeler did a lot to fix that.
Yeah, because like just upkeep bolt you, put my mountain in my graveyard, draw another threat was huge, but that's gone. So I just think a lot of these cards are a fair bit worse than they were. Like Goldspan Dragon is just another top end card that's gone for greater Gargadon. Red isn't typically flush for resources to pump into a Gargadon. It wants to be actually taking meaningful game actions on turn one, which Gargadon isn't. So
yeah, no, I think it's fair. I think some of these cards will come back round to on some of the ins when we get to kind of the one of the big archetype changes, which is like a sacrifice theme. But let's just go back to some of the red cards that they have added to kind of replace some of the aggressive cards that we've lost. So coming in is like cards like Robber of the Rich, which I think is solid. I think that's fine. Bloodfeather Phoenix. In the few games we've played with that in my own cube, I thought has been quite good. And then it kind of stops. No, it's, Karizev, Skyship Raider is fine. And Rampaging Frostodon I don't think is a bad 3-drop. I think in a mono deck it's going to be solid, but then I guess maybe I'm looking at that through the lens of a more creature-based cube where my opponents play creatures. If you're playing against Storm, that doesn't really do much apart from bolt you a couple of times.
Yeah, I think it's really one where it seems fine, but when you compare it to Lelio, which they cut for it, is really underwhelming.
No, I think that's fair. Yeah, so some interesting red choices. It's probably worth just touching on that. Do you think this is a purposeful attempt to power down mono red? Was like mono red like that good? Basically, the classic thing I've heard about MTGO Cube is kind of like if you want to get your trophies, you draft mono white or you draft mono red, and kind of. I know in the case of you two, you draft blue white. I'm aware of that, but like, do you think this is a purposeful way of powering down mono red?
I mean, it might be a deliberate attempt to bring mono red down, but I think the big reason we've got this massive overhaul is there's a new curator of the cube. So it might just be their philosophy slightly different than what they want their mono red deck to be doing. They might not want their red deck to be quite as efficient, and they might want it to feel a bit more combo-y, so that whatever deck you're in, you feel like you're doing more combo stuff. And that's how I think the whole overhaul is. On like a grand scale, I think everything's got a lot more combo-y. So they might just want your red deck to feel that way as well. Just, everything went perfectly and I Ember Cleaved you, or,
Yeah.
Does it Dark Dweller Oracle? I think it goes through cards at quite a rate, doesn't it? Is that what that one does? Yeah, so I think it's just it's they want the flow of the games to be, or at least their philosophy is the flow of the games is a bit more combo-y and more outs for everyone to do their thing, regardless of whether they win or lose. And it's a lot less 1, 2, 3, 4. Thanks for playing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's also a couple. I think the one we didn't mention as well is Fiery Confluence, which is just generically a really powerful card, but also great in mono red. It's a deal 6.
Yeah.
And also allows mono red deck to interact with some of the broken artifact starts. If you're not already dead when you have 4 mana, that can definitely happen. But blowing up people's mana rocks is also pretty good.
I think the big thing about the confluence in Jockle Hops out is that that's going to do wonders for my win percentage. Not because I'm going to aggressively take Fiery Confluence, but I'm going to have 4 or 5 less drafts across the season, which are not derailed by Jockle Hops being in the cube. So I'm pretty, I'm disappointed to see it go, but I am pretty hyped to win more games of Magic.
Yeah, I've seen Josh make the statement, "Oh, this is the perfect Jackal Hops deck," because he had 1 Planeswalker. So
I likely made that claim without a single red card in my pool as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I've taken some aggressively bad Jockle Hops and forced them into some terrible mana bases. But I don't know, the cards are so dope. I guess that's one of those things where they just net fun drop it, right? Because it's not actually enjoyable for my opponent.
Yeah. I wonder if with what we're seeing as a nerf to mono red, the other thing to consider here is that the people making the changes to a cube have access to a bunch of data that we do not. We don't know what mono red's win percentage is. We just have our subjective view of it. Whereas they can be looking at a spreadsheet that says, "Oh, when people draft mono, they win 65% of their games." I don't think it would be that high, but
I don't think
it's possible.
Yeah, one of my feelings about the cube generally on a more archetype level is that over the last few iterations, last 2.5 years is that mono red and mono green have been getting worse and worse with each iteration. Like I think mono white's kept up and kept pace with everything, but I think just mono red and mono green have been struggling versus the your Okos and Uros and that sort of slightly more all of our creatures 2-for-1 philosophy in new cards. I think those two decks have got a lot worse, but that doesn't really mean anything. It's just
No, I
I'd be
don't disagree with that at all.
yeah. I don't think it was a particularly tier 1 deck in the last few iterations. I think it was good. You could definitely trophy with it, but I don't know. It's most of my mono red decks though. I always accepted I was in mono red midway through pack 2 rather than before that.
So it's always interesting with the monocolor aggro decks, how you end up there. I think mostly the way you want to end up there is you take a couple of good red cards early. You have like a Ragavan, a Lightning Bolt, a Fiery Confluence, whatever it might be. But the problem with mono red is you really don't want to be the second mono red drafter at the table because you will not have enough playable mono red cards. So mostly the time you want to move in is if you've got your good red cards and you notice there was, say, an Eidolon of a Great Revel in the first pack, and that only goes in mono red, and if that comes back to you, then that's the moment when you can be like, okay, now I'm going mono red.
Yeah, so it's just when you're looking at red being roughly open, but you're also taking your decent blue cards or your decent support green cards, and then it's in that pack 1 when you start wheeling the real signals that mono red is open, like your Eidolon of the Great Revels, your Sulfuric Vortex, that sort of, and Lightning Bolts as well. If you're tabling the 1-mana burn spells, that's when you can start moving into mono red. The other time to really consider moving into mono red is when cards like Yawgmoth's Wood or Tendrils doesn't wheel. At that point, you probably want to start considering the fact that you got an Unholy Heat earlier, quite a big sign for where you should go. But
unfortunately, you can't get Unholy Heat anymore because that was just cut for Firebolt.
Firebolt's cool. Firebolt's a good.
That's actually a good
one.
change for mono red because
Yeah.
people will take your Unholy Heat off you more aggressively than they will take your Firebolt off you, and your Firebolt can go at your opponent's life total, which Unholy Heat cannot.
Nice. Right. We mentioned mono green in the last little minute. Should we move on to green now? Because there does seem to be a fair, like an overview of green, because a lot of the changes do seem to be cutting cards for tutors.
Green, I think, is quite exciting because it's going to have the same sort of ramp package it did before. But the thing that green's always struggled with is it's either needed, it's needed to get to that 7, 8, 9 sort of mana, and the only card that's meant you haven't had to get there is Natural Order. And now with this change, you've got a lot of tutors. So you've got Time of Need, which tutors up a legend. You've got Worldly Tutor, which tutors to the top of the deck. There's also Primal Command, which is another to hand tutor, if I remember that card correctly. And I think there was one more.
Tooth and Nail's back.
Tooth and Nail, sure. So that's quite expensive still, but it just seems a lot more tutor heavy, which means we're going to be able to get silver bullets, and we're just going to be able to get our win conditions a bit easier.
Yeah, because that's on top of Green Sun Zenith, Finale of Devastation.
Oh yeah, and Pattern of Rebirth is another new one, and Pattern of Rebirth is insane, right? Like that's a really cool addition. I don't know if there's any green cards that can kill themselves effectively, but Pattern's just going to put some really sick stuff into play.
Devoted Druid?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's sick. So you can just Devoted Druid out a big fatty, be it it's not Progenitus now, right? It's a Traxxas. So yeah, I think green's gonna be a lot more now. It's just gonna be elf, tutor for something thick, and then the next and the nice thing about all these tutors apart from Pattern is that they all give your opponent an untapped step and the opportunity to respond to how you're about to kill them. So I think they're going to play quite nicely, unless you're the green deck and you tutor for something and then just die, which I imagine is going to happen a lot because your opponent's been put on notice. But I think the green is quite exciting because I think green struggled as well. I think the green change is quite cool.
No, definitely. Like when I look at the cuts for cuts for green, it is kind of a lot of I don't want to say underwhelming cards, but Magus of the Order never really got there. I think I'm right in saying Elder Gargaroth is maybe a creature that you maybe would have wanted to get in the past, but again, a Baneslayer Angel is probably not where we want to be in this style of cube. Like, I'm surprised Pelucranos made it this long. Like, yeah, unless I'm missing something. Like,
Pelucranos, I have often heard as the creature you use to explain the cards you shouldn't play in Vintage Cube. Like, it's the archetypal creature that someone who hasn't played Cube before would be like, oh, Pelucranos, this is fantastic. And then they put it in their deck and then they lose because it doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, and like you've got rid of the Titania thing, which is good to see go. Garrick Relentless is a shame. I liked him. He not for green really. I just liked it in the sort of survival decks. But yeah, like a lot of these cards are just cards that we're not going to really miss, right? Bushwhack is a fight spell. Cool. Circle of Dreams Druid was 15th pick the vast majority of the time.
So I'm interested that you. So I think the green tutors are cool, but I have my doubts that they're going to be great in mono green, particularly. I don't really see that it solves mono green's problem of you don't do anything until you hit 7 or 8 mana. You're not. It's not like you have like combos to tutor for, particularly that let you do stuff in the early turns of the game. It's not like we're setting up, Devoted Druid combo or something. Are we just tutoring for our 8-drop that's going to kill them?
Yeah, I don't know actually. I don't know.
So they have brought in Court of Bounty. It's the one that gives you the initiative, and if you have the initiative on your upkeep, you cheat something into play. Is that kind of the plan? Is it?
Oh yeah, maybe it is just you're supposed to actually be playing with Eureka now. I can't imagine that is the case, but I think one of the issues with mono green in the past is you've played your dorks, you've curved your, you've got to the point where you can produce 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana sort of thing, and you just have nothing to do with it. Whereas I think all of these, they've cut a bunch of chaff and mid-range cards. So now we're going to ramp, and we're going to almost always, if we've got a reasonable mono green deck, we're going to almost always have access to our top end now. Whether we make it there or not, mana-wise, that's a different story. But I think 1-2, Elf into turn 3 Pelucranos is pointless, right? You might as well just have mulliganed that hand or just gone to the next game. But at least now, green has card draw and access to their deck and something to do with it. Like they've actually got an output and a decent game plan.
I just have my doubts that putting Primal Command in your deck to get your 8-drop is better than just putting another expensive creature in your deck.
Yeah, I guess it is one of the tricky parts with mono green. I think it's one of the reasons why in my own cube, like I've cut like Raphelos and that kind of stuff. Like it's just not good enough. And it could just be a thing of, because mono green has always been part of the vintage cube, or at least as long as I have seen it, there's always been like a mono green elfy natural order style of deck into hoof, that kind of thing. Maybe they are just trying that, like in this iteration, yes, they made 80 changes, but maybe they're trying not to change too much. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but maybe it's kind of like, we'll try and make it work this time. If it gets there, awesome. Or if it shows some levels of improvement or people like it, then maybe we'll push that a bit more. Maybe in the future they'll just give up on it.
Perfectly reasonable, yeah. I don't know. I think it looks better than it has been. You might be right though, James. That actually, like maybe Primal Command isn't where you want to actually be, and you want to like. I think Worldly Tutor is just very good. I think that's just very powerful because it's 1 mana, goes to the top. It's an instant. I'm going to get it straight away. Grand. I think that's great. And then saying all of this, right, as we did, just as we said earlier, Fiery Confluence is back, so that's going to be a big downer as well for your green deck.
And I think just to be clear, when we're talking about green here, we're being not great. We're talking about mono green as the elf 7-drop not being great.
Yeah.
Green, like multicolor green, I think can be really very good.
Your 3, 4, 5 color green decks are, I think, reasonable.
Yeah,
that sort of transitions over to like let's do a green next deck, because like we do have a couple of cards that I'm kind of assuming for like a Landsy base deck or maybe like a 3-4 color deck. So we have Renom Realmbreaker that's come in from the new set that fixes all your lands. That seems to going to go in that kind of thing. We say to Wayfinder. I mean, I love Say to Wayfinder. They have just cut Life from the Loam, which I know is probably not great anymore, but it's got Dredge on it, therefore I will stand that card till I die. And also Springbloom Druid, another way of sacking lands. Like, this will kind of again transition us into into the sacrifice theme that I think they're bringing into other colors. But where do you feel on the like Green X lands package? It looks like they're trying to do something with it, but they have also just cut Field of the Dead. So I'm not entirely sure where this lands. What do you two think about this?
So there's a few cards which put lands in your graveyard pretty well with the Sata Wayfinder. I think Orcish Lumberjack is very relevant here.
Zuranorb has also just come in as well. That's the other one for
Zuranorb
sacking
has
lands.
just come in, yeah. And
Zuranorb Fast Bond's quite exciting.
yeah, I think these. I've drafted a lot of the lands deck. I don't think it's particularly good. You can definitely win with it, but you need a lot of pieces to line up. I think this is giving you a little bit more redundancy because there was definitely an issue before where you're putting like multiple Crucible type effects in your deck and you only have like one or two things that work with them, and if you don't draw them, then you're not really doing anything. And I think like giving you Lumberjack and Springbloom Druid and Sata Wayfinder as just playable cards lets you get a bit more consistent there. But I have my doubt. I think it's only really Lumberjack that I'm actually excited for in this archetype.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a really good lands deck to play. I think you're still going to be looking at just doing Crucible Strip Fast Bond sort of stuff to just lock out the game. Like they've just dropped Field of the Dead, so you don't get too much reward now for playing a bunch of lands. And then you've got Dark Depths combo, but that's just very hard to actually set up and pull off.
Yeah, the way I've had most success with the fast bond stuff is not being all about it. It's being I have loads of fetch lands because I'm playing like 4 or 5 colors anyway, because I just want to play loads of really good cards from 4 or 5 colors. And because I have the fast bond, I'm willing to put like a Crucible or a Ren and Sex in my deck because you can go off from just I have a fast bond, a Crucible, and a fetch land, so I'm going to get every fetchable land out of my deck. But I don't think you want to necessarily be all in as some of these cards are, and even things like Springloom Druid. It's 3 mana. This is a very low power level card for this cube. Like, I understand there's stuff you can do with it, which helps it get to maybe playable, but I think it's still pretty underwhelming.
No, I think that's fair. One other land that's probably worth mentioning in this little section is City of Traitors has also just come in. I quite like this card. It's obviously very good in a lot of formats. I think it's been quite good in Cube, and obviously good when you have effects that can bring it back to kind of negate the downside of sacking it. It's effectively another Ancient Tomb in some kind of decks. What do you think of City of Traitors coming in?
It's cool. It's certainly not for the 5-color green mid-range lists. I wouldn't say, just because they're always so color intensive. It's really hard to get use out of the Ancient Tomb sort of thing. I think the biggest decks that will get a boon from that will probably just be your more aggressive decks that just want to pump stuff out. It's hard for the artifact decks to use City of Traitors, like, because you can. The good thing about Ancient Tomb, right, is you can play a Talisman or a Signet on one. I don't know what's in at the moment, but the City of Traitors, like, yeah, okay, you get to do that, but then you can't make another land drop the next turn without, hampering yourself that turn or the following turn. So I think it's good, but I think it's better in mono white, mono reds.
Yeah, City of Traitors out my Gideon ally of Zendikar seems like where you want to be with that card.
Yeah.
So we've talked about red and green already. Let's talk about the archetype that's kind of has 2 of those colors in, the kind of Jundi sacrificey style of deck. So cards that we're kind of bringing in. So they're sort of doing aristocrats, sort of. Like we have like Blood Artist, Meat Hut Massacre, Mayhem Devil coming in as kind of like drain pinging effects. We have cards like Cabal Therapist, Greater Gargadon that we've mentioned, Dark Dweller Oracle, Phyrexian Tower as kind of sacrifice outlets, and we've kind of got Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, which, yes, I know, I do agree, is not fantastic, but it makes tokens, which is why I'm assuming it's in. We've got things like Jadar, Ghoul-Caller of Nephalia, which is a worse Ophiomancer. What do we think of them trying this kind of aristocratic style of deck? Because there's kind of like there's a sprinkling of sacrifice stuff across the whole cube, but it seems to be primarily focused in kind of red-black with a sprinkling of green for some land stuff. Like, what do we think about that?
My take would be that I think they've had a problem for a while where what does black do outside of Reanimator? And they've kind of tried a couple of things. They tried to do like black as an aggressive thing, didn't really work. I think they're going back to the sacrificey thing now. I'm fine with them trying that. I don't have super high hopes for many of these cards. I think there's some here that you can use without being really all in on the sacrifice thing. Like something like Cabal Therapist, which is the black for a 1/1 at the beginning of combat on your turn. You can sack a creature. If you do, you Cabal Therapy your opponent. Like just playing that with a Bitter Blossom or an Epheomancer or something. That's like a small pocket of sacrificey synergy I can kind of get behind. I don't know that I actually want to be like putting Blood Artists in my deck and trying to kill people with them. I don't think there's really enough there for that. And honestly, even if you somehow get like a critical mass of that stuff and your draw lines up, it's just still quite small ball. I don't think it actually is quick enough or powerful enough to really compete. Would be my concern with this stuff.
I think I agree. I think it's good that they're trying to give black red some sort of identity, or even just black some sort of identity. Because it's always been a support color. It's just got rando powerful cards like Reanimate, Entomb, Dark Ritual, Yawgmoth Will. That's all there really is to write home about black. I think it's cool to try and give it a deck and some identity. I think you could get there. I think you're going to need to have big payoffs. Like I think one of the biggest cards for this like sort of idea of a sacrifice deck is going to be the house. It's going to be Bodas's Citadel. I think if you can get some dorky creatures and then like maybe a ritual just to push it out, that sort of thing, and then you can push out the house and start going off the top and sacrificing guys on your way through to clear the top of your deck. I think that sounds cool because you got the Thought Picker Witch, which I think it targets the top of a deck, and the Dark Dweller Oracle that does it to your deck as well. So I think if you can keep going, there's maybe something there, but I think that's just a lot of pieces coming together, and it's probably just going to pay out that it's not very good. But I think it's cool that they're trying.
I think the thing that's really bizarre to me here is the omission of Yawgmoth. Yawgmoth was in for a while, got cut. I was pretty surprised they're not bringing it back if they're making this change, because that is both a sack outlet and a way to get a lot of value off of all your creatures. You're not trying to assemble your Midnight Reaper to pay you off for creatures dying and something else to sacrifice your creature. It does both of them and kills their creature while it's at it. So I was pretty surprised that one was missing, because that's one of the few I'd actually ever had success with before, was just like, hey, I've got like a Yawgmoth and a Bitter Blossom, and that's a lot of value. So yeah, that seemed like an oversight to me. I don't know.
Especially as so they've cut Smokestacks, which I think most people can kind of agree there's kind of been power crept out of the format for quite a while, but they've kept Braids in at 4. That could be Yawgmoth quite easily, I think. But
yeah, seems odd to me. Although similarly to Josh's Jackal Hops situation, cutting Smokestacks will do good things for my win percentage in this format.
Yeah, I agree. It will. Yeah, I like that they're trying to do something, because like that's been the problem, right, with especially the like Mardu colors. I think is that outside of their respective support for blue, they've not really done anything themselves other than be mono red and mono white. So I think trying to put in a black red archetype is a good idea. Yeah. I'm not convinced we've actually got the right pieces. Like, I don't know, I don't know if Viserys is in here, but like I think all our attack outlets need to be free, or
I don't think Viscera Seer is in here. I'm not.
Yeah.
Apart from Woe Strider, I don't think I see a free sack outlet unless I'm missing one.
I guess you can technically argue Greater Gargadon is a free sack outlet, but yeah, no, it seems kind of tough to me. I will say, for one thing I have in favor of this change is you look at the cards that got cut and they're like all really quite bad. Like Cryptbreaker's decent. I quite liked Blood Type Harvester, but I think I'm in the minority there.
Yeah, for sure, you're in the minority.
Yeah, but I'm fine with them cutting Cough because it's so egregious to play on Magic Online, because you animate your mountain and realize it was one you played this turn, and then you're very sad. The rest of these cards were all really bad, I think.
Kind of things like a Vault Sleeper, Scrap Heap Scrounger, and Skyclave Shade. When you're kind of not really supporting mono black aggro, they seem quite easy to come out for me to make room for some other cool stuff.
I think the only time I've ever registered Scrap Heap Scrounger is when I've had a mono white deck and a rando Scrubland. Right, that's been its entire role in queue. Is I probably need another 2. Hey, I've got this Scrubland. I've probably run it without a Scrubland as well. A lot of these cards are just not very good. The land swap I'm a bit sad about, but Phyrexian Tower's dope. That's coming in. That's very exciting. It's a good sack outlet. It pushes our mana up as well, but it's only once per turn. Takanuma, I thought, was just like a really, really cool card, though. I really, really enjoyed that one, but hey, it's gone.
Give it a couple of months. I think once the Warhammer cards appear on Magic Online, I think we could get something a bit more spicy, because currently none of the Warhammer cards are here, so we don't have.
Oh, we don't have Poxwalkers. Give me some Poxwalkers
Yeah.
already. Just on, you reminded me by saying a couple of months. They've actually extended Cube on Modo time until the end of May.
Oh, really? Oh, so it's up for what, 20 days at time of recording? Let's go.
20 days, 16 hours, and 4 minutes.
Just an estimate there, isn't it?
Estimate.
Yeah. Give or take 30 seconds.
Hard to say.
Don't worry, I've still yet to register 0 cubes this season. Don't worry, guys. I'm still with you.
Well, we'll see if we have one by the end of this.
The page is open. The play points have been spent. I just need to hit join queue.
Right. Well, let's move on to blue, because I think there's a card in here that I know got you two excited. I think I've kind of held you two back long enough. Talk to me about Show and Tell coming out, but more importantly, Dream Halls coming in. Who wants to take this one first?
James, talk.
I'm probably not the most qualified person, because I am yet in the history of Magic playing to put Dream Halls on the stack, but it looks really spicy. I'm pretty excited about this one. So Dream Halls, for those who don't know it, is...
Read the Tempest, the Stronghold text.
I'm absolutely not reading the Stronghold text.
All right. The Stronghold text is...
Have a minute. I'm going to do one that Daniel can use, and then you can talk shit. Yeah, so Dream Halls is an enchantment for 3 blue, and says, rather than pay the mana cost for a spell, its controller may discard a card that shares a color with that spell. So this seems super abusable. So I think kind of the easy thing to do with this is you accelerate it out, you discard your medium black card, and you play a Gristlebrand or an Archon of Cruelty, or you discard your Brainstorm and here's my Atraxa. It's also pretty interesting to me that this is not, say, exile a card from your hand, it says discard, and nowhere on this spell does it say you have to be casting the card from your hand. So it seems kind of interesting in Storm. Like, imagine accelerating out a Dream Halls and then casting a Draw 7 for free. Then you have 7 new cards to abuse. You can also... this also works with Underworld Breach, and it works with Yawgmoth's Will. And both of those things seem pretty spicy. I'm not the premier Storm player on this call, so I'll be interested to see what Josh thinks about that. But yeah, what do you reckon?
I think it's really exciting, and I think yeah. So like the obvious thing is play your Dream Halls and then discard a black card or discard a card, put your fatty into play. But I think the most fun is going to be in combo decks where you accelerate out Dream Halls and then you discard a blue card and cast a fact or fiction, and you just have to try and get through your deck, sort of thing, or just ponder your way through. I think that's going to be where it's really fun. But I think the card is just really quite busted. Yeah, especially when you're going to ritual it out, and then you don't need to do anything else after that, right? We just need to get to 5, and then we're sorted. So we can ritual it out, discard something, play a Mind's Desire, and that's one less mana that we've got to make before we desire or something like that. So I think the card's going to be kind of insane. I do wonder though if it's just going to end up just as like a 5 mana finisher for like mid-rangey Sultai strategies, that sort of thing, where we can put a big green guy or a big black guy into play. But yeah, obviously we've not played with it yet. I've not played with the card in years and years and years, but I am very excited for it. Yeah, I'm not sure what else there is to say on it. Like, just I think just like the Mystic Confluence, that sort of thing. Plop Jace into play.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I think you have to be doing something more than just putting fatties into play, because it does seem like just worse than reanimating the fatties as a way to do that.
Well, at that point, it's basically a 2 mana more show and tell, which is the card that's come out for it. So if you're just doing fair things with it, it is just 2 mana more for an effect that we already kind of have in theory. If that makes sense.
And you do have to bear in mind that it is 2-sided. Playing this against Reanimator seems very, very bad, actually.
Yes and no. Like, it's one of those ones where, like,
or you have to win right away, right?
Yeah, but the problem with show and tell, right, was that you get your nut draw, you go, Sapphire, Ancient Tomb, show and tell, and you're like, rah, here's my Grizzlebrand, and your opponent's like, that's cool, I've got a Palace Jailer, and you lose. I think the cool thing about this is that it's a very similar effect to what we had, but I, the caster, always get the first bite because they're now timing restricted, right? So I always get the first go at least, and I get to determine when I put it on the stack as well. So
yeah, for sure.
I think that's an advantage to it being fun to play with. I think another one that's interesting that's coming in blue is Displacer Kitten, though, and that is a 4 mana 2/2, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get to blink a permanent under your control, I think. But
yeah, there was some decks playing this in like Legacy, I believe, a while ago.
It's played in Vintage. It's in the Dual Shops deck in Vintage, which is like I think it's the best deck at the moment. It's at least the fastest. It's very close to being like an Oops All Spells sort of style thing, where you're just trying to push out a cover to Duel early. I did check; they didn't put Duel into the cube though, which is a grand shame.
So, what broken thing are you thinking of doing with this?
The issue is I'm not sure how we make infinite mana in cube with it.
Oh, that's the point of it, right? Okay.
Because I'm not sure how we can get something back to our hand quite easily. The best, as far as I've got so far, is top, but I still need to access the top card again.
It can, even if we're not making infinite mana, it can make a lot of mana with just like blinking something like Mana Vault, right?
Yeah.
You tap your Mana Vault, you cast your spell, you blink your Mana Vault, you have your 3 mana again. That's pretty powerful, and you can just keep doing that.
You cast your Dream Halls.
I don't know if this is related, but Paradoxal Outcome just came in. Is there something there? Is it that kind of thing? You want to be?
I like that they've put it in because it's an iconic cube in Vintage, an iconic card in Vintage, right? So it's cool that they've put in a card which is like, quite iconic in the format that this is, attempting to be similar to. If it's even, I don't know if that's even a thing that you think of, but I'm just really dubious of PO in cube because you don't really have the Moxen to make it into like a card drawing ritual. Like you're going to have 1, 2, maybe 3 on your luckiest day out, sort of thing. I don't know what else we're sort of picking up, unless we're going to make like a blue-green elf ball deck. But
yeah, I have my doubts as well. I think it's yeah, I'm sure you could construct games where it would be great when you draw all your Moxen, but you know what's also great when you draw your Moxen, like literally any 4 mana spell.
Yeah.
Like just play Jason Mind Sculptor, it'll be fine. It doesn't matter. You don't need to put in a card that does nothing some amount of the time in order to make your double Mox draw really good.
Some blue cards that have come out, I want to get your opinions on them. So it's technically blue, but sort of. Academy Ruins has come out, so we don't have the Mindslaver lock anymore. Ledger Shredder has come out. Hullbreaker Horror has come out, and so's Gilded Drake. I know I've definitely seen some piles that you two have run with the Gilded Drake.
Gilded Drake is, I think, the one that I missed. I'm most sad about, because Gilded Drake, I think James and I, we both started drafting just like it was Tundra decks where all we're doing was we get a Gilded Drake, and then after that we're just like Brazen Borrower, Teferi, Venser. Every single one of these just becomes like a massively high pick, and all you end up doing is just taking your opponent's permanents, picking up your Gilded Drake, and doing it again and again and again. It was also really sick against the Reanimate decks, but yeah, I'm a bit sad to see that one go. The others I'm not too worried about.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. I think the Mindslaver lock was cool the 1 in a million times where it actually worked, but it's a lot of mana. It's to actually loop that, and mostly you can win the game when you have that much mana anyway. I think it went very late the vast majority of the time.
Did they drop Slaver as well?
I don't think they did.
Slaver is, I believe, still in.
Yeah, Mindslaver's still in at 6. Yeah.
I think coming off of the back of like the blue changes though, you've got, and I think maybe this is where they have envisioned PO working, is when you've got the 3 other artifacts that have come in, right? So those 3 that we've got under PO: Reservoir, Helm of Awakening, and Candelabra of Tornos. That's good PO support. If all of my talismans and signets cost 1 mana, that's great. If I've high tided and I've got a candle or a candelabra, that's awesome in of itself. So maybe Helm of Awakening PO is where your PO deck's going to come from, and you're going to do that to. I mean, you're not going to be ritualing with it like we do usually, or like producing mana out of it, but you'll be mana neutral, drawing 3, 4, 5 cards. I think that's exciting.
So yeah, I mean, I was wondering if there was a deck here where we were leaning into like an artifact-based storm deck with Candelabra and tapping Tolarian Academy, and yeah, as you say, with the helm, all of our mana rocks are cheaper. We can actually replay them at a reasonable rate after we PO. I think that's, and then presumably Ether Flux Reservoir is in as a kill condition for that deck.
Yeah, I think Ether Flux Reservoir is still crap as a kill condition for your combo decks.
I mean, it sounds bad, yeah.
I mean, it's just the classic thing of you need in this list that we're constructing in our minds, where we're going to kill with a Reservoir and pick everything up with a PO and replay it. I still need these Flux Reservoir before I do everything right. The reason a lot of the Storm decks that we draft in Cube are good is because we have like a nice tutor chain, and we're going to ritual some stuff out. We're going to tutor for our Yawgmoth's Will. We're going to ritual some stuff out, and I'm going to tutor for my Tendrils. And Tendrils is the last, or Brain Freeze, or whatever it is that you're using on the day. That's gonna kill them, and that's the last piece I go and get. If we're using a Reservoir, you can sort of do that, but you still need gas after the Reservoir comes into play. So you can cast 10 spells, play a Reservoir, gain 11, gain 12, gain 13, and kill them. That's a thing you can do, but still needing to do stuff after the Reservoir makes it really bad on games where we're constrained, or games where our opponent is making us go off. Right, when the world is clear and it's easy, sure, it doesn't really matter what we kill with. But when we're being forced to do stuff, which is when you're usually going off with Storming Cube, you're usually waiting to that last possible turn. I think Reservoir's just not where we want to be. I mean, I'll play it if I have to, but I'd much rather be on any of the other kill conditions.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine a deck that would prefer to have Ether Flux Reservoir than Brain Freeze, right? For example.
Yes. I mean, I will have it in my sideboard for when my game 1 opponent shows me their Eldrazi. But yeah, I'm not convinced that is where we want to be.
Yeah.
However, it's probably better than Smokestack.
That is true. Do you like Helm of Awakening just as a general Storm card in most Storm decks?
Yeah. In your Storm decks, mana's the most important thing. So reducing the cost of anything is always good. Obviously, like reducing your red rituals to make them into dark rituals is great. Reducing the cost of your payoffs is going to be really easy, really, really good as well. So yeah, I mean, it makes your, like, if you play Helm on 2, okay, and then turn 3, you can dark ritual Yawgmoth's Will, and then you can Dark Ritual again, right? So that's sort of just like reducing just by one. It's very easy. It's very nice, and I think it's gonna be sick. Just that tiny interaction of just ritual out my Yawgmoth's Will and still have one floating to get my graveyard going again. That's insane. Like that's a whole turn.
Yeah. So I think the play pattern's interesting, right? With the card it reminded me of was the mana doublers, Mana Flare, and the green one.
Yeah.
Heartbeat of Spring.
Heartbeat of Spring. Thank you.
It's a slightly lower risk version of those. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So with those cards, generally, because it's so bad to double your opponent's mana for a turn, you kind of can't play them until the turn you go off. So you need a way to untap all your lands to get your mana back because you've tapped 3 of your lands to play your mana doubler. Whereas with this, it's pretty bad making all their spells cost 1 less for a turn, but it's maybe not so bad that it will just lose you the game on the spot. So you can play it the turn before you go off and have a reasonable expectation of untapping.
I think you're right. I think you don't want to. I think you want to do it on your turn and get your rebate later on in your Storm turn. But it is a lot safer than doubling their mana. That was the classic one. Was you're on the play, you then have to put your opponent to 6 mana, and then they kill you, and that's But I think it's definitely safer. I just don't. I still think you want to save it to your Storm turn, and you'll still gain the mana back as you go through, but it's a lot less risky.
Yep, makes sense.
I know we're kind of jumping around a bit, but on the topic of like, no, that's fine.
Rip your structure.
No, good. On the topic of like the artifact-y style of decks, what do you two think of the fact that there's now 2 permanents in here that make artifact tokens when you cast spells? So like we have Saheeli, Sublime Artificer coming in, and Third Path Iconoclast that both make cheap little 1/1 artifact bodies whenever we cast a non-creature spell. Is this kind of fueling into the blue-red deck that's artifact deck? Sorry, is the blue-red artifact deck kind of leaning into the Tolarian Academy as a Lord High Artificer kind of thing, or do you think it has play in anything else?
Yeah, it seems pretty interesting. So with Third Path Iconoclasts, see the card it's very easily compared to is Young Pyromancer, which is I always found to be pretty underwhelming in Cube, but this has a few advantages of it triggers off any non-creature spell, not just instants or sorceries, and it makes artifacts. So yeah, it lends itself very nicely to an artifact deck. I think you've hit the nail on the head with the cards you want to abuse it with. I think you want Tolarian Academy and Urza, and you can turn every one of those artifacts into mana, and I think you're probably then just trying to cast like Sundering Titans and big colorless threats or big threats of any sort, I guess. But it's definitely an interesting space. Like we've not really had that effect of when you cast a spell, make an artifact recently in Cube.
I don't know what it does. It obviously boosts them when you've got those cards. I think another big support card for it is going to just be Sensei's Top, right? You tax your turn by 1 mana, but you always make a 1/1 every turn. Is just going to be decent card flow, decent token flow. But yeah, I don't think it's massively exciting for those archetypes. It's a little bit of something, but I don't think it's revolutionary.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't think it's something you're going to be taking highly at any point, but I think if you already have an Urza and an Academy, then you can be pretty interested in Saheeli.
So again, let's move on to our last monocolor before we talk about some of the other multicolors. So we have white. There's quite a few changes, including one I think is going to be quite strong, and the first time that we've seen this mechanic in the Vintage Cube. So with white, should we start with White Plume Adventurer? We have the initiative. It's been breaking other formats. It's been very good in my cube. How do we think adding just the one of them is going to be in the Vintage Cube?
Yeah, I think this card's going to be pretty phenomenal. Anyone who's played against the initiative in a two-player game of Magic, not the sort of game of Magic it was designed for, knows that this is a pretty unbeatable amount of value if you're not doing something pretty broken. Obviously, it's Vintage Cube. We can do something pretty broken, but just letting your opponent sit with the initiative for a lot of turns is going to be a really big problem. And unless you have a lot of creatures of your own to attack, just killing White Plume Adventurer really doesn't help. Yeah, I think this is a phenomenal card to accelerate out and going to be great in most white decks, I would imagine. I imagine it was a pretty conscious decision just to add one initiative card rather than add it. There are like 4 or 5 decent ones they could have added. I think that was probably a conscious decision to try and not have too many games be about the initiative.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the more premium 3s that you're going to want in your white decks. Like, if we can do, did the new Mother of Runes come in as well? That's that toxic guy. What's it called? Skrelv.
No, it did not.
Oh, that's a shame. I thought he was a shoo-in actually. But yeah, like just the classic mono white curves landing on this on 3 are just going to be unbeatable, I think. So, 1 drop, whether it's just a Savannah Lions variant or a Mother of Runes variant into an annoying 2-drop Thalia, Tithe Takers just come in, these sorts of things into White Plume, I think it's just going to be completely unbeatable.
And just imagine if you have one piece of acceleration, if you have any mocks, if you have an Ancient Tomb, if you have a City of Traitors, it's going to be absurd.
Yeah, and like the real, I kind of wish they'd added the 4-drop one, the Seasoned Dungeoneer, which just makes it makes you win every combat. It makes combat impossible for your opponent, sort of thing. But at least you can have dreams of taking it back. But where White Plume starts untapping some of your creatures, I think is, I think it's going to be quite the force. Big upgrade for White. But
are there any other white cards that stick out? Like Arena Rector seems like an interesting one. Arena Rector is the one that it's a 4-mana 1/2 that when it dies, you get a search library for a Planeswalker and put it onto the battlefield. So I'm assuming the aim is we're getting Khan or Ugin with this. Like, if you can do that, that's pretty good. But do you think that's consistent enough?
I'm not particularly sure this is great. It's just a 3-mana dude, right? It's a 3-mana 3/3.
So no, it's a 3-mana 1/2.
It's a 3-mana. Oh, fucking hell. Okay.
But it does mean it's more likely to die, though.
It does make it easy to die.
I mean, when you said it was a 3-mana 1/2, it's actually a 4-mana 1/2.
That's a 4-mana 1/2.
Oh, I'm so off it. Okay. No.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not saying I won't talk myself into putting it into a deck sometime because it's a fun dream to have. But
what's really annoying is they've put this chaff card in whilst dropping Jackal Hops, which is like the best enabler for it, right? Just like hop the board. I don't care what my Planeswalker is, but no, I don't think that's a real thing. Because like your best case scenario is you get to chump block with it in combat and put a Gideon into play. I don't know. I'm sort of off it.
No, that's fair. I think we mentioned Enlightened Tutor coming in earlier when we were talking about the tutors. But
I don't know if we did mention Enlightened Tutor, but Enlightened Tutor I'm kind of excited for.
Are you Enlightened Tutoring for your Dream Halls? Is that how these games are going? Or
Enlightened Tutor for Dream Halls sounds good, but also just the mana's really good at the moment because we've got the fetch lands, we've got all the triumphs. So like Enlightened Tutor should search up my Animate Dead. Like is a really nice splash we can make. I think that's going to be quite a big one. Enlightened Tutor for Pattern of Rebirth, the other tutor that came in. That means we can get any creature into play in the future. I think that's exciting. I think that's exciting for anyone who opens a Black Lotus as well. So that's quite easy in level 1.
That person already has plenty of excitement, I'd say.
I'm pretty sure that
they're already having all the fun. They get no more fun.
Enlightened Tutor for Lotus, turn to a 5-drop. Sounds great. Where do you stand on Enlightened Tutor, James? Because I can imagine you're not quite as excited about top tutors as I am. Because you usually draft a lot more mid-rangey 2-for-1 card value decks than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not putting it in my normal mid-range value piles, but like I don't really believe in.
You can tutor for Fast Bomb.
We'll come to that, yeah.
Sorry, that literally just came to me.
I don't really believe in like Enlightened Tutor for my mocks, for example, as a way to accelerate your mana because you're just down a lot of cards. And you've got to be doing something really, really broken with that. But yeah, Enlightened Tutor for like Dream Halls, Pattern of Rebirth, whatever it might be, if it's like a combo piece that's actually doing something really busted for you if you just play that card, I think that's pretty powerful. It's like I think it's a card that you won't play super often, but when you do, it'll be really good. Or I mean, you can put it in decks where you shouldn't, and it won't be
I'll
good.
do that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm glad I got your permission.
When I
But I
play
will
it, it'll
do
be
that
good.
one.
Yeah. Are there any other white cards that stand out, like Loyal Retainers being a little reanimate spell
Low
in white?
retainers, I think, is cool. I couldn't see anything to do with it that's particularly exciting, like that's particularly like really busted sort of thing. Like one of the old commander combos was lower retainers and Safi, right? And you just go round and round and round and round. I couldn't see anything similar to that where we're going to get to do like a big infinite loop and lots of clicking. You know, Entomb my Grizzlebrand, this is just another way to do that.
Yeah, that's more what I'm anticipating it'll be. Bring back a big legendary. Are we done with white, or should we move on to a big legendary?
Let's move on to some big legendaries, yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about a multicolored card. So, rather unsurprisingly, we have Atraxa Grand Unifier coming in for this with Progenitus coming out. I was going to be a bit past Progenitus anyway, but Atraxa seems like quite a step up and going to make the reanimated decks that little bit better. Why not? Are you too happy to see big Atraxa coming in?
Yeah, I have no idea how Progenitus lasted this long in Vintage Cube. It's never ever good. Atraxa's phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely. It's I think it's a pretty premium reanimation target, but you can also natural order for it. I'm not above trying to hardcast this.
Pitches to Solitude.
Pitches to Solitude, pitches to Force of Will, pitches to Grief.
So I think it's great, but my big question for you guys is: we're going to live in magical Christmas land. Pick one, pack one. Let's say we're getting Mox Jet, even better. And then so we go Jet, Entomb, Reanimate. Pack 4, you're past a pack with Atraxa and Grizzlebrand. Which one are you taking?
Oh, it's still Grizzlebrand for me. I think I think there's a lot of reasons to like Atraxa over Grizzlebrand in a lot of constructed formats because of the pitching to all your free spells, but obviously you don't have that density of free spells in Cube. And I think you will run into more spots where Atraxa only draws you like 2 or 3 cards that matter, and that's not enough.
Sure.
Where are you on that pick?
I don't know. I'm going to say Grizzlebrand just because of the live the dream style thing, but I will also am aware that Atraxa will probably consistently keep me alive longer. I'm more likely to just kill myself to my own Grizzlebrand and play badly. It just gives me more options to screw up, basically. I would, so just to throw it out there, I know it's not legendary, but I would put Archon over both of those. That's
I'd
just
agree
my
with
opinion. But
yeah, I think you are right. I think Archon's better,
But interestingly, in this changes, it does seem that the cube designer really wants Grizzlebrand to be the premium reanimate target again, because we've had a lot of spells that tutor legendaries or reanimate legendaries, like we mentioned with Loyal Retainers. There's even like Gurio's Vengeance has come in, which reanimates a legendary. That doesn't bring back the Archon. It brings back Grizzlebrand and Atraxa. So yeah, maybe in the Vintage Cube now, there is an argument that because of that kind of support, that Grizzlebrand and Atraxa have gone above. Just
also Grizzlebrand with Dream Halls is busted in a way that the others aren't, because you can just like draw 14 cards and cast as many of them as you want. You're not never losing that game.
Yeah, no, I'm unsure. I think it's close on that pick, because I think the thing that Atraxa is so powerful with is you get your cards up front no matter what, right? So yeah, I'm not sure, because it's going to be quite easy in your reanimate deck to be at a point where your Grizzlebrand can't be activated until you've got him into combat. Whereas getting your cards up front means that we can, search up our protection spells, whether it be, a new chain of Vapor or Doomblade or whatever. So I think at the moment I'm hedging Atraxa. I haven't lost enough games with it yet.
Oh, I've lost plenty of games to Atraxa. Don't worry.
It
still sucks to play against.
I think yeah, you're going to get less cards, but I think it's better to have those cards up front and start working towards your next proactive play.
We've covered quite a lot of ground, but I think there's a few kind of multicolored slots here and there. So let's start with Dimir, because there's quite a few Dimir cards changing. So we have Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, Kaito Shizuki, and Satoru Umezawa coming out, with Thief of Sanity, Tezzeret Agent of Bolus, and Fallen Shinobi coming in. I think Fallen Shinobi is a fantastic card. I'm glad to see that back.
Yeah, these are interesting changes. There's powerful cards coming in and out for sure. Both at the two Dimir 3-mana Planeswalkers, Ashiok Nightmare Weaver and Kaito Shizuki, I'm quite sad to see both of those go. I think 3-mana walkers in the multicolor good stuff deck were really, really strong. You just Thoughtseize, removal spell, 3-mana walker, both of those 3-mana walkers win the game pretty handily if you can protect them. I kind of wonder if the Ashiok change was because it's so demoralizing just sitting there and being decked by Ashiok while you lose all of your combo pieces. Whereas at least Thief of Sanity, I guess you can interact with. But Thief of Sanity coming in is certainly a really powerful card. You kind of only need to hit once for it, and you've got a tremendous amount of value. That's the 3-mana 2/2 flyer. When you hit them, you look at the top 4, you exile 1, you can cast it for any colors, and the rest go in the graveyard. So that's an interesting change. I don't mind that. Tezzeret coming in for Kaito Shizuki, I don't think that Tezzeret's that great. It's the Tezzeret Agent of Bolus, which you can make something a 5/5, or look at the top however many cards of your deck for an artifact. Card's obviously fine in the right deck, but I think Kaito Shizuki's pretty great in any deck that can cast it. All the modes are good. It can make creatures, it can draw cards, it can even be a discard outlet for your Reanimator deck. But I'm really pleased to see Fallen Shinobi come back. It's a really powerful card. It kind of just wins the game in one connection a lot of the time, and kind of an interesting deck building challenge to build around as well. Just in that often your Dimir decks don't have a lot of cheap creatures to enable it, so it's you kind of do have to pay some deck building cost, which I think is good in Cube. Yeah, I think overall I don't mind those changes, but definitely a shake-up in cards I play quite a lot.
Yeah, I think just on that, I think they've specifically added Lutil Core to support Fallen Shinobi, so you can get a bit more value from it. And yeah, kind of with Fallen Shinobi and Thief of Sanity, obviously they're cards that play with your opponent's decks when you're playing in Vintage Cube, where in theory everyone has really good cards. You're going to get something good off them. So,
and Fallen Shinobi can really do some oops I win things when you play against Reanimator or Sneak Attack or whatever, and you just hit their fatty and win the game on the spot.
Yeah, rounding off with some other. I'm assuming no one really cares about where they're coming in for Aurelia the War Leader.
Aurelia the War Leader is one of the most baffling inclusions in Cube in quite some time, I would say. Normally when they add really bad cards, they're new cards, so it's at least they're trying to promote the new set or whatever. Aurelia just had no redeeming qualities, so happy seeing that one go.
What do you two feel about Soul Herder coming in for Yorion? We can no longer live. You can technically still live the 60-card dream, but you just don't get a Yorion with it.
I think it's an improvement. I enjoyed the Yorion dream, but I think it's definitely an improvement. So it looks like there's a bit more of a flicker thing. I think as well. I saw earlier on there's also the new white angel. That's another flicker wisp coming in. So I think that's good. But I think this is something that James is going to revel in, is just constant Soul Herder value.
Yeah, With the evoke elementals as well, they're all pretty phenomenal with Soul Herder. Like Soul Herder or Soul Choose great, Soul Herder or Fury is great. There's not like a shortage of good ETBs in the cube anyway. Soul Herder, your White Plume Adventurer, is going to be quite something as well.
That's horrendous. That's pretty hideous, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to enjoy that one.
I wonder if we'll get to Soul Herd in the tracks of this season. That's where it's at.
I wouldn't rule it out.
Just on Soul Herder sneak attacks are really funny, right? Like, I know we've already won the game, but just in our win more, we can stack those triggers right and keep it.
Yeah. You can keep your thing, get your ETB again.
Yeah, just in case I need to annihilate 6 once again.
Yeah. It's definitely a game plan. You can even sneak in the Soul Herder. You don't need to pay full retail for it.
Oh my god.
That's the value. That's the value right there.
Nice. Well, let's I think we're about to round it off. Couple of changes to the land sections, which I think are improvements. So we've got Raging Ravine, Lava Claw Reaches, and Creeping Tar Pit coming out. Underground River, Sulphurous Springs, and Carplusan Forest coming in.
Carplusian Forest or something like that. Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah, nice. Carplusian Forest, love it. These just seem better to me. Like lands that don't come into play tapped, I'm assuming are going to be better than man lands in 2023.
So I agree. I think Raging Ravine was so like the roles those ones played before, right? Raging Ravine was like a cool storm combo finish when your storm deck was awful.
I'm sorry, that's not where I thought you were going with that, but okay.
Right, so the joke on Raging Ravine was that you could make a bunch of mana, activate it a bunch of times, and then it gains the +1/+1 counter ability however many times you've activated it, right? So we can make infinite mana, say, and then I can activate it 25 times. I'll attack you, and you'll take 28 damage.
Mm-hmm.
That did not come up much, but it was always in the back of my mind that it existed. Right. So it was like a real, like, I'm sure people played it in their Gruul decks, but that's just not how I interact with Cube. So I liked the bit where in the back of my mind, you could see a pack and you go, there's a Tendrils there that I need, and I'm going to take the Dark Ritual now because mana's more important. But then you'd go, there's still the Raging Ravine in that pack as well. So if the Tendrils doesn't make it, I'm not cold. So that was good. But the one that I actually think is a shame to go is Creeping Tar Pit, because Creeping Tar Pit was a really good way because like a lot of the time in blue and black, you miss on Reanimate, you miss on Storm, and then you've just got a rando blue-black deck which has got Bob and Snapcaster Mage and a Jace, and you need to really grind out this game. I think Creeping Tar Pit was a big part of that in actually killing your opponent within 40 cards or checking their Planeswalkers and that sort of thing. So that one I think is actually going to be an impact. I know we just talked about the black upgrades, and I think they are probably upgrades, but yeah, I think Creeping Tar Pit actually held a reasonable place in this Cube's meta game. So that one I am sad to see go.
Yeah, see, I'm one of the people who actually wants the rando blue black deck with Dark Confidant and Snapcaster Mage. So I am pretty sad about Creeping Tar Pit, actually. It's only 3 mana to activate and 3 power of unblockable is kind of a lot. Like, obviously this isn't the most powerful thing you can be doing with your mana and cube, but if you're playing like for good blue and black interaction and have some good like resource denial stuff, it's actually a way to close game. And you can sometimes be struggling for that. But yeah, I think for a lot of decks, like, you know, in your Storm deck, you'd much rather just have another untapped land, right? Or your Reanimator deck.
Custodian Lich is still in though, so we can still have some bullshit blue-black decks.
Oh yeah, it's not going to stop me.
No, I agree. I love those decks. Like when you like miss on everything blue-black, and then you just have like you're sitting down for 3 games of Magic, and it takes you just like 6 hours of 3 games every round, and it's just an absolute grind, and you kill your opponent, and like you maximum got 2 cards left in your deck, and you're just like, if I just got a Thassa's Oracle, this league would be piss easy, even though I've got no way to enable it. And it's just, yeah, Like I've won with just Snapcaster Mage Bob, Custodian Lich, and a Creeping Tar Pit is my only actual threats sort of thing. Like those decks are the most fun.
Yeah, phenomenal.
What was the third one? Sorry.
Lava Claw reaches out, Sulphur Springs in. Lava Claw reaches was always pretty bad. I'm sure you have stormed off and killed someone with Lava Claw reaches, but it was pretty bad. I think that one's fine to go for sure.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. I think we're going to leave it there. It just leaves me to thank Josh and James for being here tonight, for your great insights. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was a lot of fun.
And to everyone out there watching and listening, thank you all very much. This has been Powerful Nothing, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.